I want to begin with a question that sounds simple, but it isn't. If a decision follows every rule, every procedure, every checklist, does that automatically make it true? Most institutions today would answer yes, and that answer explains most institutions fail over time. And by the way, what I mean by procedural truth. Procedural truth is not truth in the real sense. It is something being treated as correct because the process was followed, not because the conclusion matches reality. In procedural truth, the question is no longer, is that true? The question becomes, was the procedure followed? Once that shift happens, truth becomes optional. And why institutions love procedures? Let's be honest, procedures feel safe. They reduce anxiety, distribute responsibility, protect careers, creates plausible deniability. This is main. They creates plausible deniability. If something goes wrong, the response is ready-made. We followed all protocols. And once that sentence is spoken, discussion usually ends. I can give an example. If during investigation of a certain case, like we have a case like Augusta Westland VVIP chopper case of India. So the government can say we followed all protocols, and the discussion usually ends here. And following rules does not require judgment. It does not require courage, and most importantly, it does not require thinking. This is why procedures are dangerous when they replace reasoning. Now with the case of Hannah Arendt and thoughtlessness. Hannah Arendt identified this problem decades ago. When she studies Adolf Eichmann, she expected to find a monster. Instead, she found something worse, a bureaucrat. Something you don't say himself as evil, only efficient. He followed orders, he followed rules, he met targets, and because of that, he believed he had done nothing wrong. And this is what Arendt called thoughtlessness. You can find this in her book Eichmann in Jerusalem, and I would preferably recommend you this book if you want to understand vulnerability of evil and the current working of the world. And this is not a stupidity, not a cruelty. This is the absence of judgment. Modern institutions are built to avoid individual responsibility. Decisions are collectively made by committees, panels, review boards, algorithms. Everyone participates, no one owns the outcome, and no one also holds the responsibility. If harm occurs, blame dissolves into the system. We can blame that this department was involved, this department was involved, this department was involved. You can see this in government failures most of the times. This creates something deeply dangerous, responsibility without accountability. Responsibility without accountability. How intelligence agencies show this perfectly? This case. Intelligence agencies are masters of procedural truth. They have tradecraft standards, review processes, source grading, confidence levels, risk assessment, and an assessment can be perfectly formatted, fully compliant, procedurally sound, and still be completely wrong. Yes, once published, it gains authority, not because it is true, but because it passed the process. And why the judgment is seen as a threat? Here is the uncomfortable path. Judgment introduces uncertainty. Uncertainty creates risk, and risk threatens institution more than error. So people who question conclusion are labeled not aligned, too subjective, unprofessional, disruptive. Procedural thinkers are rewarded, critical thinkers are managed. Checklist versus thinking, a core discussion for this video. Checklists are useful, but they were never meant to replace thinking. When institutions rely entirely on checklist, reality is reduced to boxes, complexity is flattened, context disappears. If all boxes are checked, the outcome is approved, even if common sense screams otherwise. This is how disasters are approved calmly. And the legal system example, courts often prioritize proper procedure, evidentiary rules, timelines over actual innocence, moral clarity, context. Wrongful convictions persist Wrongful convictions persist for decades because the process was fair. The result may be wrong, but the procedure is treated as sacred. That's why our Supreme Courts are untouched and treated as sacred. Even even after they are usually most of the times wrong. Now add algorithms. Algorithms follow rules perfectly. They do not doubt. They do not hesitate. They do not hesitate. They do not reflect. Once an algorithm labels someone high risk, procedures active procedures activate automatically. Humans stop questioning, the machine becomes authority. This is procedural truth without conscience. And why the procedural truth feels moral? This point is important. Procedural truth feels ethical because it allows people to say, I did not decide this, the system decided. I just followed policy. Morality is outsourced to the process, and once that happens, no one feels guilty. And how the truth quietly dies? Truth does not die in pragmatic moments, it dies in meetings. In phrase like out of scope, not actionable, does not meet criteria, we will revisit later. Truth is not denied, it is deferred forever. Why institutions defend procedures so fiercely? Because procedures protect power. If truth mattered more than process, leaders would be questioned, decision would be revisited, authority would weaken. Procedural truth stabilizes hierarchy. It keeps everything looking legitimate. It keeps looking legitimate, even when reality is falling apart. Final topic, difference between justice and legality. Legality asks, was the rule followed? Justice asks, was this right? Procedural truth answer only the first question. And when institutions forget the second question, they stop serving reality. And the final cost, procedural truth creates efficient injustice, organized blindness, chain of failures, disaster that no one feels responsible for, and system that functions perfectly while producing disastrous outcomes. You can actually see it with Turkey, who is currently facing 51% inflation. Let me end with this. Rules are tools. They were never meant to replace thinking. When institution confuses compliance for truth, they become dangerous, not because they are evil, but because they are certain without understanding. And the most dangerous words in any institution are, we followed the procedure. Thank you.